So as a sort of personal finance series, we have been speaking to Delano Abdoll. He's a tax specialist and attorney from Tax Consulting SA regarding financial immigration, if leaving is something you're thinking about. Now, a recap: in our first episode, which centered on the definition of tax residency, he got into important information that you need to have in terms of what is a tax resident and what is not. Tonight, we're getting into important processes to cease tax residency. Here's part 2. Last week on the show, we got into what a tax resident is and how does one know if they are or are not a tax resident. And I think what was also interesting in the piece was you weighed in on how you're encountering some of the problems around this particular matter with South Africans who've immigrated quite frequently in your day-to-day runnings. So back to the topic at hand. If someone is leaving South Africa permanently or they intend on returning for retirement, what are some of the considerations thereof?
So first off, thank you again for the opportunity. I think this is, again, a very important question to ask. I know that there's a lot of professionals who are looking for opportunities abroad. And some of the considerations that come into play is really, for how long does one see themselves outside of South Africa? And it's not a very easy question to answer. And this is where we kind of get two categories of intention. We either having a situation of taxpayers who want to leave South Africa on a permanent basis. And that doesn't mean these taxpayers will not in future return to South Africa for the purposes of short stays and holidays. Mm-hmm. But for purposes of where they want to reside and where they want to live the rest of their lives, this will be abroad on a permanent basis. The other side is considering taxpayers who might have an opportunity to go abroad, and it's contingent perhaps on employment, as an example. So going abroad maybe for 3 years or 5 years, and then returning to South Africa after that short stint. And this is a distinction, and a very important one, when it comes to communicating your tax residency status with SARS. Because the underlying basis for these taxpayers to update their status or change their status from a resident to a non-resident very much differs depending on those two categories.
Well, let's get into what are the options that are available to you in order to cease your tax residency.
So if we focus on outbound expatriates, so taxpayers leaving South Africa, where South Africa as a starting point is their tax home, their original tax home. The two avenues one can follow, you can refer them to as the financial immigration process or the permanent ceasing of tax residency. And the alternative is using a double taxation agreement, also known as an international tax treaty, to seize your residency status on a temporary basis. Those are the two avenues you would consider. Just to clarify, importantly, one can have the financial immigration or permanent cessation process followed irrespective of what country they go to. Whereas using a double taxation agreement, this is very much dependent as a starting point whether the country these taxpayers are going to has such an agreement in place with South Africa.
Jy luister na die OFM Sake Uur met Ole Bocheng.
And on that note, it's time for me to wrap up. And like I mentioned, hand over to my colleague, Ashmond Martin. You heard Delano Abdoll at the end there getting to the processes to cease residency.